North Korea engaged in this attack.
Tell me about the moment when you first realized there was this slow-moving car crash was happening with the North Koreans have hacked Sony.
Imagine a morning that begins like any other, a bustling Hollywood office, executives sipping coffee, screens flickering to life. But in an instant, everything changes. On November 21st, 2014, Amy Pascal, co-chairman of Sony Pictures, sat at her desk, her inbox lighting up with an email that would unleash chaos. She ignored it, or perhaps didn't even see it. 3 days later, the world of entertainment would be rocked by a cyber attack so audacious, so devastating, that it would cost Sony millions.
So, well, I think that, you've been through just something so extraordinary in the last few months that none of us can hardly imagine what it must have been like.
No, cannot.
And
I promise.
so what I want to know is, tell me about the moment when you first realized there was this slow-moving car crash was happening with the North Koreans have hacked Sony, and they're letting out, first of all, they're sabotaging the whole system, and people are finding sort of skull and crossbones on their computers, and then it's all shutting down, and you think everything is going haywire. But then there was this awful personal moment when you realized that they were about to dump all your personal emails out onto the internet.
That was a
Tell
good
me
moment.
what you went through at that time.
Well, first of all, I ran this company, and I had to worry about everybody who was really scared. So people were really scared. All of their Social Security was out there. People worried about their passports. People were worried about all kinds of things. But nagging in the back of my mind, and I kept calling, going, they don't have our emails, right?
Expose its darkest secrets and spark a global mystery. Who was behind it? Was it really North Korea driven by vengeance over a movie? Or was there a deeper, more sinister force at play? Welcome to Project X, where we dive into the darkest corners of cybercrime, hacking, and digital espionage. This is When North Korea Attacked Sony. It was a Monday morning, November 24th, 2014, just days before Thanksgiving. Sony Pictures employees trickled into their Los Angeles offices, ready for another week of movie magic. But as they booted up their computers, their screens didn't show the usual desktop. Instead, a chilling image appeared, a red skeleton, its hollow eyes staring back, with a message that sent shivers down their spines. "We've already warned you, and this is just the beginning," it read. "We continue till our request is met. We've obtained all your internal data, including your secrets and top secrets. If you don't obey us, we'll release the data to the world." Signed by a group calling themselves the Guardians of Peace, or GOP.
It's been just about 2 weeks since word broke of cyber criminals hacking into Sony Pictures, and each day seems to bring more damaging, embarrassing, or worrisome revelations. The hackers have released a steady flow of information, ranging from salaries to personal emails, social security numbers, and health records of employees, to internal messages showcasing industry hardball.
The message froze every device in the office. The entire company was paralyzed, hacked in a single devastating blow. Employees couldn't access files, emails, or systems. Panic set in as they realized the scale of the breach. This wasn't just a prank. It was a full-scale assault on one of Hollywood's biggest players. The warning wasn't new. 3 days earlier, on that fateful Friday, Amy Pascal and other top executives, including CEO Michael Linton, had received an email from an account named Frank David. It demanded monetary compensation, threatening dire consequences if ignored. But the executives, swamped with daily emails, either overlooked it or dismissed it as spam. They had no idea the storm that was brewing. 2 days after the initial hack, on November 26th, the GOP struck again with a new email, this time to 4 senior Sony members, including Pascal and Linton. "We will punish you completely," it declared. "I am apostle of God, the boss of the GOP. We began to release data because Sony Pictures refused our demand." The message warned of a steep cost for ignoring their demands, but Sony still didn't respond. 1 hour later, every employee received the same chilling email. The network was paralyzed, and all data, private and public, would soon be released unless the demands were met. The GOP wasn't bluffing. The day after Thanksgiving, they began dumping Sony's data into the public domain. 5 unreleased Sony films, Fury, Annie, Mr. Turner, Still Alice, and To Write Love on Her Arms, hit the internet, costing the company millions in potential revenue. But the real damage came from the private emails of Sony's top executives. These weren't just internal memos. They were unfiltered, scathing exchanges that exposed Hollywood's underbelly. Producer Scott Rudin called Angelina Jolie a minimally talented spoiled brat in an email to Amy Pascal. Kevin Hart was labeled a whore by a Sony executive for allegedly demanding extra payment to promote a film on social media. Names like Leonardo DiCaprio, Adam Sandler, Michael Fassbender, and Jennifer Lawrence were dragged through the mud in conversations now laid bare for the world to see. The leaks were a bombshell, igniting a firestorm of scandal that left Hollywood reeling. But this was only the beginning of Sony's nightmare. The question on everyone's mind was, why? What drove this unprecedented attack? Many pointed to a single film, The Interview, a comedy starring Seth Rogen and James Franco as journalists recruited to assassinate North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The movie's plot had already sparked outrage in North Korea months before the hack. In June 2014, North Korean officials condemned the film as psychological warfare and an attempt to undermine Kim's regime, labeling it reckless, provocative insanity that crossed a line. They sought international support to ban the movie, but the United Nations upheld freedom of speech, refusing to intervene. North Korea's response was a chilling promise of merciless retaliation. Could this be the motive behind the hack? The timing seemed too perfect to ignore. North Korea had a history of cyber attacks, successful strikes on South Korea and the US dating back years, with a growing army of hackers reportedly trained in China and Russia. They viewed cyber warfare as a cheap, effective weapon, as crucial as traditional combat. But was this enough to pin the blame on them? As the leaks continued, the GOP turned up the pressure. On December 1st, they released the salaries of 17 top executives and 6,000 employees on file-sharing site Pastebin, exposing a stark pay gap that fueled outrage among Sony's workforce. Media outlets jumped on the story, amplifying the discontent. 2 days later, on December 3rd, the GOP escalated further, leaking personal information of 47,000 employees, addresses, phone numbers, credit records, social security numbers, all out in the open. Even celebrities like Sylvester Stallone had their private details exposed.
We've got a Hollywood whodunit to tell you about tonight. The FBI has been looking into a major computer breach at Sony Pictures for the past 2 weeks. But Friday, the hacking took an ominous turn as several employees received threatening emails. Here's Carter Evans.
CBS News has confirmed that some Sony Pictures employees are concerned after receiving a rambling email yesterday written in broken English. It asked them to sign a statement cutting ties with Sony. If you don't, the email said, not only you, but your family will be in danger. The message claimed to be from the head of a group calling itself Guardians of Peace, which has taken responsibility for a series of hacks against Sony. The attacks began on November 24th when this image popped onto nearly 4,000 company computer screens. Hackers stole sensitive corporate documents and erased hard drives. Computer security firm Identity Finder analyzed the data hackers released online and found more than 47,000 social security numbers, including current and former Sony employees, as well as personal information of celebrities like Sylvester Stallone and director Judd Apatow.
The hackers sent another email to Sony executives, doubling down with threats against them and their families, advising them to behave wisely. Employees voiced their frustrations through leaked complaints, revealing a toxic work environment marked by overwork, poor management, and dissatisfaction with the company's films. The GOP's actions weren't just a data breach. They were a calculated strike to dismantle Sony from within, exposing its vulnerabilities to the world. The investigation that followed was a race against time. The FBI and cybersecurity experts dove into the breach, uncovering a chilling playbook. For months, the GOP had executed a sophisticated spear phishing campaign, sending fraudulent emails to Sony executives and employees. These emails, designed to look legitimate, tricked recipients into clicking links that installed malware, granting hackers access to Sony's systems. The FBI traced many of these emails to a common alias, Kim Jong-moo, and found they'd been active since early September 2014. Once inside, the hackers escalated their privileges, gaining admin credentials to access Sony's entire network. They used proxy tools to extract data bit by bit, storing it in hard-coded addresses embedded in the malware. On November 24th, with the data fully extracted, they unleashed their final blow: total destruction. Over 8,000 computers were wiped, leaving Sony's digital infrastructure in ruins. The evidence pointed to North Korea. IP addresses linked to the malware traced back to a company in North Korea, and the FBI identified a suspect, Park Jin-hyuk, a programmer for Chosun Expo, a front for the Lazarus Group, a hacking organization tied to North Korea. The FBI's 171-page affidavit, released 4 years later, detailed the Lazarus Group's involvement in cyber attacks from 2009 to 2017, including the WannaCry ransomware. Analysts found overlapping malware signatures between WannaCry and the Sony hack, including shared IP addresses and command structures. President Obama publicly blamed North Korea, marking the first time a U.S. president attributed a cyber attack to a foreign nation, promising retaliation and sanctions. But not everyone was convinced.
The FBI announced today that, and we can confirm that North Korea engaged in this attack.
Cybersecurity experts like Mark Rogers, a former black hat hacker, argued the motive didn't align with North Korea's goals. The GOP's demands for money and their focus on employee grievances suggested a different agenda, perhaps a disgruntled insider or a group exploiting the North Korea-Sony tension. Legendary hacker Dan Kaminsky noted that hackers could easily mask their origins, routing attacks through servers in Russia, China, or North Korea to throw off investigators. The fallout for Sony was catastrophic. Between December 13th and 14th, the GOP released more data, teasing a Christmas gift of even larger leaks. During Sony's Christmas party, Michael Linton and Amy Pascal gave speeches, publicly downplaying the crisis, with Pascal even challenging the hackers. But behind closed doors, fear gripped the company. The GOP emailed Sony, demanding the interview be pulled from theaters and never released, threatening violence if they disobeyed. Sony quickly complied, removing advertisements, billboards, TV promotions, and canceling the film's theatrical release. After pushback from the U.S. government, led by President Obama, Sony reversed course, releasing the interview in 200 theaters on Christmas Day and online, earning over $1 million in its first weekend. North Korea accused Obama of forcing Sony to distribute the film, calling him the chief culprit. But no retaliation came. No violence, no further leaks. The GOP went silent, leaving Sony to pick up the pieces. The hack cost Sony between $35 million and $100 million in damages, but the true price was its reputation. Executives stepped down and former employees sued the company for failing to protect their data. The breach exposed Hollywood's inner workings, from petty rivalries to systemic inequalities, leaving a permanent scar. It was a wake-up call for the industry. Sony invested over $15 million to overhaul its cybersecurity, upgrading systems and hardware to prevent future attacks. The incident reshaped how corporations view cyber threats, highlighting the vulnerability of even the biggest players to a determined foe. Yet the mystery lingers. Was North Korea truly behind the attack, driven by fury over the interview? Or was the GOP a smokescreen, hiding a different motive? Greed, revenge, or something darker? The evidence points both ways, leaving us with more questions than answers. At Project X, we don't stop digging. What do you think happened that day? Was it a nation's revenge or a deeper conspiracy? Share your thoughts below and let's unravel this enigma together. Thank you for watching. If this cyber attack hooked you, like, subscribe, and join us for more dives into the world of hacking and digital espionage. Stay vigilant, keep questioning, and we'll see you in the next one.